Have you ever wondered what happens when a struggling single dad shows up at his ex's wedding on her own invitation and turns everyone's world upside down? Evan Rivers was the kind of father most people overlooked. By day, he hauled crates of spring water through office towers. By night, he helped his 6-year-old daughter Lily with math worksheets until her eyelids drooped. Money was tight, but Evan never let Lily see how close they came to losing their apartment, and he never let her taste regret. When a sudden spring storm caught them unprepared in their cramped courtyard, Lily tugged at his sleeve and held out a dripping umbrella she'd found. Behind her, a woman in a perfectly tailored coat watched with cool detachment. "Keep it," she said, voice like polished steel. "Consider it a gift." Evan tried to protest, but she'd already slipped an envelope across the receptionist's desk. White ivory, gold-embossed letters spelling out her name, Vivienne Sinclair, and an elegant line that read simply, "And guest." Then she walked away, water sluicing off her heels, leaving Evan and Lily with soggy shoes and a silent challenge. Evan didn't know it yet, but Vivienne Sinclair was a billionaire CEO whose name alone could influence markets. She had every luxury imaginable, except the freedom to trust anyone. An arranged engagement to Maxwell Grant, scion of another financial dynasty, had just been unceremoniously redirected toward a younger, socialite bride. Her invitation to the wedding wasn't a courtesy, it was a dare. 3 days later, Evan found himself in the gleaming lobby of Sinclair Tower, delivering water for an all-hands meeting. His delivery uniform, a faded polo and scuffed boots, felt awkward beside marble floors and chrome fixtures. He rounded a corner with his cart when Lily peeked from behind him. "Daddy, they gave us the wrong box again," she whispered. His face softened as he knelt to reassure her. That's when Vivienne appeared at the elevator, as if summoned by his whispered frustration. She studied him for a moment, the tired lines at his eyes, the way he straightened for Lily's sake, and then, to his astonishment, asked, "Are you free Saturday evening?" Evan blinked. "No, He glanced at Lily. "I tutor third-grade math for her every Saturday night." She nodded once, and in that instant he realized she had no interest in excuses. "Good," she said. "I'd like you to accompany me to a wedding." Her words felt like ice against his skin. A wedding invitation was already written. He'd seen it at the desk, meant to remind her of everything she'd lost. Now she was offering him $50,000 for one night of his time. $50,000 would cover Lily's overdue dentist bill and put 3 months of rent safely in his pocket. He glanced at Lily's hopeful eyes and made his decision. "Okay," he said, "but one condition. I choose my own suit, and I won't pretend to be anyone I'm not." Vivienne offered a rare smile, just the slightest curve of her lips. "Deal." From then on, nothing was ordinary. Vivienne arranged a private fitting at the most exclusive tailor in town. Evan watched in awe as a midnight blue Italian wool suit materialized around him, each seam whisper quiet against his skin. She coached him on posture. "Stand tall, breathe, look like you belong," and briefed him on the guest list. Board chairs who measured success in zeros on spreadsheets, hedge fund wolves who ate at 10 courses, socialites who traded alliances like poker cards. Evan listened quietly. He wasn't intimidated, just curious. Behind Vivienne's precise instructions, he glimpsed a flicker of something that wasn't ambition, something closer to fear. He realized she was testing him, not to see if he'd embarrass her, but to see if he'd stand firm. Finally, Saturday arrived. The Montlair estate in Greenwich shone under a shy spring sky. Valets in tuxedos snapped open doors, and paparazzi lined the red carpet, flashes flickering even before the couple made their entrance. Evan's heartbeat thundered in his ears as he followed Vivienne from the car. She walked with cool composure, black silk gown, neckline sharp as a blade, while he moved solidly beside her, breath steady, shoulders square. Inside, Maxwell Grant and Natalie Burns stood beneath a canopy of white orchids. They smiled effortlessly at the cameras, but when Vivienne and Evan paused before them, Maxwell's smile faltered. He blinked once, then twice, as though unprepared for the sight of Vivienne with someone who radiated simple strength rather than polished privilege. Vivienne inclined her head. "Maxwell." Her voice was calm, too calm. I appreciate the invitation. She gestured to Evan. This is Evan Rivers. He isn't a hedge fund heir or a legacy donor. He's the man who refused to disappear. Evan stepped forward and offered his hand. No flourish, no lecture, just a firm handshake. Maxwell tried to recover the moment, but the tension had already shifted. Through the evening, Vivienne moved through the grand hall like a queen reclaiming her throne, and Evan stayed firmly at her side. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried quiet authority. Funny, sharp, honest. By dessert, more than one guest approached Vivienne to ask, "Who is he?" They expected her to serve him up as a pawn in her revenge, but instead she smiled and said, "He's the reason I remembered what real strength looks like." As the final champagne flute was drained, Maxwell slipped away into the crowd, unsteady on his feet. Vivienne and Evan walked out together under a canopy of stars, heels clicking on the cobblestone path. For the first time, they weren't playing parts. They were simply two people who had met on equal terms, one craving honesty, the other weary of pretending. That night, Evan tucked Lily into bed and kissed her forehead. "Did you have fun at the wedding?" she asked with sleepy eyes. Evan stroked her hair. "I learned something important." "What's that?" He paused at the door. "That sometimes the strongest people are the ones who never stop showing up for the people they love." And as he turned to leave, he felt, for the first time in a long while, that he'd shown up for himself as well. The dawn after the wedding arrived unannounced, as if the world had already moved on from the evening's upheaval, yet in Evan Rivers's gut, nothing felt ordinary anymore. He dropped Lily off at her elementary school with a wave and a promise to be at her pickup, then headed back to his tiny apartment, one bedroom, one living room, an outdated kitchenette that still bore splatters of pancake batter from Saturday mornings. He poured himself a cup of black coffee and stared out the window at the gray skyline of the city, haunted by the memory of Vivienne's invitation and the way the entire room had shifted when he and she had walked in together. At first, he thought relief would wash over him. He'd earned $50,000, fixed his immediate worries, and even managed to stand firm without pretending to be someone else. But instead, a nagging question gnawed at him. Who was he now, in Vivienne's world? The ordinary man who delivered water bottles? Or the man who had made a billionaire CEO feel something she'd buried long ago? He couldn't decide. His reflection in the window looked back at him with new uncertainty. Meanwhile, at Sinclair Holdings, Vivienne Sinclair moved through her morning like a general surveying a battlefield. The glow of sunrise filtered through the glass walls of her corner office, illuminating polished mahogany shelves lined with awards and art she scarcely remembered acquiring. Yet beneath that facade of perfection, Vivienne felt a tremor of unease. The night before, she had watched headlines pop up on her phone. "Single dad steals the show at billionaire's ex's wedding." Who is the mystery man on Vivienne Sinclair's arm? The words stung less for her reputation, which she guarded fiercely, and more for what they implied. Evan Rivers had become more than a discreet accomplice. He was the story. Her board would notice. Her public relations team would demand damage control. And worst of all, she wondered whether she had misjudged the power of simply showing up. Her assistant Clara tapped softly on the glass door. "Ms. Sinclair, your 9 a.m. with marketing is ready. And there's a call from your father." Vivienne closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. "Send them in. I'll join you in a moment." She motioned Clara away, then picked up the phone. "Father." William Sinclair's voice crackled through the line, smooth and patronizing. "Vivienne, I see you made quite the entrance last night. A publicity coup, I must say." She kept her tone even. "Thank you for calling." Silence stretched. Finally, William's laugh echoed, dry and cold. "You think pairing with that deliverer will change your trajectory? The board is nervous. Investors are uneasy. You need to quell the gossip." A low fury rose in Vivienne's chest. "I don't play for their approval." Her father's patience snapped. "You inherited everything, Vivienne. Respect the legacy." She cut him off. "Legacy isn't measured by whispers or spreadsheets. It's measured by integrity." Before he could retort, she hung up. Her reflection in the glass wall showed a woman both resolute and shaky, because for the first time in years she had defied her father's command outright. Across town, Evan steered his beat-up sedan toward the water depot, mind racing through the day's deliveries. Every honk of a taxi, every blare of a siren felt like life moving on, and yet his world remained altered. He pulled into the bay and unloaded crates of bottled spring water. His coworker waved. "Hey, Rivers, big night." Evan shrugged. "Just another gig." The coworker smirked. "Right." He turned back to his own cart. Evan allowed himself a tight smile, then climbed back into his car. He drove to a small cafe where he'd agreed to meet an old friend, Marcus, a mechanic who'd once helped fix his first delivery van. They sat in a corner booth, nursing lattes. "Looked good last night, man," Marcus said. "Saw you on the news. Everyone's talking about it." Evan leaned back. "It was weird." Marcus studied him. "You happy? Or just glad you made 50 grand? Evan looked down at his coffee. "Part of me wonders why she needed me there. Maybe I was just a prop." Marcus shook his head. "Prop? You stood tall when half the room trembled. That's not prop work." Evan managed a half smile. "We'll see how long the headlines last." He drove home, filled Lily's lunchboxes, and tucked her into an early nap on the couch. Her soft breathing beside him was a comforting reminder of why he'd accepted Vivienne's deal. But even as he watched her, Evan couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge was just beginning. Later that afternoon, Vivienne's door buzzed. In walked her marketing VP, a sharply dressed woman named Rosalind. She placed a tablet on the desk, her expression tight. "Social media's exploding. Dategate is trending. PR recommends a statement, something to contain the narrative." Vivienne poured herself a glass of still water and peered over the rim. "Or we write it." Rosalind blinked. "Write it?" "Yes," Vivienne said, voice measured. "The story isn't me, it's him, Evan Rivers. He embodies the authenticity our brand has been trying to project. He's proof that what we stand for can reach beyond boardrooms." Rosalind frowned. "You want to lean into that?" Vivienne nodded. "We'll host a charity event, paid for by Sinclair Holdings, benefiting single parents and children. Evan will be our spokesperson." A beat. "You're going to put him back in the spotlight?" "He's already there. We either control the story or the story controls us." That evening, Vivienne found Evan outside her building. He held Lily's school bag in one hand, the other gripping the elevator call button. Her breath caught at the sight of him in his work clothes, jeans and a navy sweatshirt, looking as real as the morning he'd first met her. "Ms. Sinclair," he greeted, voice wary. "Please, Vivienne," she said, stepping closer. Lily peeked around Evan's leg. "Lily," Vivienne added softly, "you did great at the wedding." Lily beamed. "Thank you for teaching Daddy how to dance." Evan forced a chuckle. "Don't encourage her. She'll want lessons." Vivienne's gaze shifted to Evan. "About tomorrow, I've arranged a press release. We're announcing the charity gala. You'll speak for 5 minutes, share your story, then it's done. I'll handle all the details." Evan's jaw tightened. "I'm not a public speaker." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the invitation she'd given him, a crisp card embossed with Sinclair Holdings logo. "This is bigger than a speech. It's a chance to make a real difference, and it's yours to decide how to tell it." He accepted the card, weighing it in his hand. "Lily and we'd be honored." Vivienne watched the way he smiled at Lily with such genuine warmth and saw something she'd never allowed herself to admit. She wanted that warmth in her own life. The charity gala took place in the grand ballroom of Sinclair Tower. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, and a stage set against floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Vivienne arrived early, pacing backstage in a sleek emerald green dress that clung to her like second skin. She ran a hand through her hair, mind buzzing with every possible misstep. What if he froze? What if the press turned it into another headline? Then she heard applause. Evan's voice, steady and clear, speaking from the podium. "Good evening. My name is Evan Rivers. I'm a single father who learned 2 things last week: that strength isn't measured by wealth or titles, and that what we give each other, our time, our honesty, can change lives." Vivienne slipped through the wings just in time to see him make Lily stand beside him. Lily waved shyly at the crowd, clutching her father's hand. The audience quieted, hanging on his every word. When I was asked to stand by someone so powerful, I was scared. Not of you, but of what I'd become if I ever believed I didn't deserve my own worth. Tonight I stand here not as a symbol of revenge, but as proof that second chances are real. For me, for my daughter, and for all of us. Evan stepped back as Vivienne emerged onto the stage, her smile genuine for the first time in her life. She took the microphone, her voice softer than usual. Thank you, Evan. Your courage reminds me, and all of us, what it means to be seen for who we truly are. Sinclair Holdings pledges $1 million to support single parents in our city, starting today. The crowd rose to its feet in a standing ovation. For a moment, Vivienne let herself bask in the warmth, not the cold calculation of boardrooms, but the collective gratitude of real people. Afterward, the two slipped away to a quiet rooftop terrace atop the tower. The air was cool, scented with jasmine from the planters lining the rails. City lights flickered below like distant constellations. Lily trailed behind them, yawning. Vivienne offered Evan a glass of water. You were incredible, she murmured. He shrugged, cheeks flushed. I just told the truth. She leaned back against the metal railing. That's what scares people in power. Truth. He met her eyes. And what scares you? Vivienne hesitated, then exhaled. Admitting that I want more than success. I want someone to stand beside me because they care, not because they're paid. Evan studied her, this woman who had mastered every boardroom, yet struggled to govern her own heart. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You deserve that, more than you know. She closed her eyes at his touch, vulnerability rare and terrifying. But what does it mean for us? He glanced at Lily, who was dozing on a plush terrace sofa. I don't know, but I'd like to find out. They sat in silence, two worlds converging in that soft rooftop glow. For the first time, neither felt alone. The evening's events transformed what began as a calculated publicity move into something profoundly human. A bond forged by honesty, mutual respect, and the willingness to stand beside one another in the spotlight and beyond. Evan's courage, simply speaking his truth and lifting his daughter's hand in front of hundreds, gave Vivienne a vision of leadership rooted not in authority, but in empathy. In turn, Vivienne's decision to elevate his story beyond tabloid fodder demonstrated her own capacity for compassion over control. Together, they turned a gala into a genuine moment of connection, reminding us that real strength lies in vulnerability, and that second chances can spark lasting change when two souls choose authenticity over pretense. The night after the gala, the city felt different, softer, almost tender under the weight of all that had unfolded. Evan tucked Lily into bed, brushing a stray curl from her forehead as she murmured, Daddy, I think we changed the world tonight. He pressed a kiss to her temple. We changed one small corner of it, he whispered, and watched her drift to sleep with a smile curving her lips. Downstairs in the quiet of Vivienne's penthouse, she stood by the window, tracing constellations in the glass. The sound of her father's voice, his threats, his disdain, had finally receded, silenced by her own choices. She poured herself a glass of chilled water and called up to the empty nursery that awaited her next chapter. For the first time, the room didn't feel like a reminder of sacrifice, it felt like possibility. Evan arrived just after midnight, hands in his pockets, uncertainty shading his steps. Vivienne turned, her gown falling around her like dark moonlight. He offered her a tired smile. Mind if I stay up a while? She nodded, lifting her glass in a silent toast. He sat beside her on the low sofa, their shoulders almost touching. The silence between them was different now, no longer charged with risk, but brimming with quiet hope. Tonight, Evan began, you gave me a platform. You trusted me with your company's reputation, and I know how much that cost you. Vivienne exhaled slowly. You reminded me that power without purpose is empty, and that sometimes the most potent change comes from the smallest acts, like standing up for your daughter or inviting someone in need onto your arm. He reached out, brushing her hand. You walked into that room not as a wounded bride-to-be or a CEO exacting revenge, but as yourself, vulnerable and courageous. That's what made the difference. Her eyes glistened. I was terrified, she admitted softly. Terrified that if I showed too much feeling, I'd lose everything. But you taught me that feeling deeply is how we stay alive. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I've learned that running toward fear builds more strength than running away ever could. They sat in that embrace of shared truth until the first stirrings of dawn seeped across the skyline. At 6:30 a.m., Lily bounded into the living room, rubbing sleep from her eyes. You guys are still up? She yawned. Vivienne scooped her into her arms, planting a kiss on her cheek. We were just talking about how brave you were tonight, she said. Lily beamed. Evan watched them, his chest swelling with pride. In that moment, the three of them, single father, little girl, and billionaire CEO, felt like the most natural family in the world. 2 weeks later, Sinclair Holdings' new initiative launched nationwide. The Lily and Friends Foundation, named after Evan's daughter, providing scholarships, childcare support, and mentorship programs for single parents. Across social media, headlines shifted from gossip to impact stories, parents sharing how the foundation had changed their lives. At the grand opening gala, Evan stood on stage again, Lily at his side in a twirling dress. Vivienne watched from the front row, tears shining in her eyes as her daughter shyly accepted applause. She recognized then that love, in its purest form, was never about grand gestures alone, but about the daily courage to show up, to speak truth, and to give generously from an open heart. As the event wound down, Vivienne and Evan slipped away to their favorite rooftop terrace, now festooned with white lights and vines for the celebration. The air was cool, full of promise. Look how far we've come, Vivienne whispered, leaning into him. He wrapped an arm around her. Farther than I ever dreamed. Above them, fireworks erupted in the distance. Unexpected, brilliant showers of color that mirrored the joy swelling in their chests. They watched in silence until Lily, clutching Vivienne's hand, squealed, Can we make a wish? Vivienne closed her eyes. I already did. When the last burst of light faded into night, Vivienne turned to Evan and said, I don't just want you beside me in public. I want you beside me in every tomorrow. Evan's gaze was steady, full of warmth and certainty. I'll be there, always. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a small velvet box. Vivienne's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple ring, an unspoken promise forged not in obligation, but in the fierce freedom of partnership. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but they were tears of triumph, of love that conquered fear. She nodded, unable to speak, and he slipped the ring onto her finger. Lily clapped, her laughter ringing like bells in the night. In that luminous moment beneath the stars, they didn't just become a family. They became living proof that when two people dare to stand together, their bond can heal old wounds, shatter expectations, and ignite hope in everyone who witnesses their story. Months later, as the foundation thrived and their lives settled into a rhythm of joy, Vivienne surprised Evan one Sunday morning with a tender confession over pancakes, burnt as always because perfection was overrated. You know, she said between bites, I once believed cold strategy was the only path to survival. Now I believe love is the strategy. He smiled, drizzling syrup onto Lily's stack. And look how well it's working. From boardrooms to rooftops, from whispered doubts to jubilant declarations, their journey had taught them that true power lies in vulnerability, and that the fiercest love is the kind that dares to stand exposed, knowing the world will see every flaw, and choosing to stay anyway. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness and courage can transform any life. And remember, sometimes the smallest acts, a shared umbrella, an honest speech, a simple ring, spark revolutions of hope that light up the darkest nights.